Okay. 3, 2, 1, and we are live. How we doing, Aaron?
Ah, I'm doing good.
Finally, was able to get you on here to
Hello.
actually have a proper one-on-one and sort of, I guess, frame you out properly because you've been featured in a lot of other stuff, and I guess we like to use this situation to actually have good one-on-one hangouts and properly focus on people instead of just rotating through individuals on like the pseudo podcast. So welcome.
Thank you. I feel so honored.
As you, I guess you should. It's like 9 episodes deep, and this might have been like my first important podcast, and then it's the one. It's literally the idea that's branched out everywhere else.
Oh,
So to lay the groundwork, Aaron Bryant here is a actually very new friend to um, Melanie and I and everything. We made friends really fast actually when you were down here in Florida, between
yeah.
because Tyler introduced us, and I think
We're almost. It's not really
we
new,
met
new
because
though, is it? It's like a year ago.
it's like a year ago now. Like, well, we met and then you graduated a little bit later. Like, we were probably the last people you invited to your graduation like party out at Disney, not on account of forgetfulness, but on account of these are new good friends. They shall come with me,
Yes.
basically. So we met through Tyler Dye and basically messed around with or at least tried to help work with Xander Brow getting Unknown Plumbers season 3 going. And then we got to go out to Disney. Where's the notation? For your graduation party.
Oh, that's right. Because we were doing the script meetings.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we met, and then I did the filming for. I think I was Lucas.
We first met with Tyler's party, and Tyler was like, "No,
Right.
I'm bringing this guy
Where
in to play."
everybody's car ended up getting towed.
Yes, yes. Like two people's cars got towed that night, and I ended up covering for Corey, whose car got towed because we had to go out to. So what's this? Where it's at the apartment complex, not really directly across from UCF's stadium, but basically
It's
like right next
Northgate
to it.
Lakes.
Northgate Estates,
Northgate Lakes.
Northgate Lakes, Lakes.
Don't
So
live there. It's terrible.
was it actually terrible outside of the whole car towing thing, or?
I mean, outside of that, when I first moved there, it was pretty great. And then, like a year or two into me living there, there was a new manager of the housing, and everything started becoming terrible. The new housing manager was the one who got rid of the theater.
Okay, break that one down. I remember you raging about this.
Yes. So there was a theater in my apartment complex, a small theater with like theater tier seating where it was like 4 seats in a row, but like 20 seats in total. So it was like one, two, three,
Yeah.
four. And there was like a projector in the room and a sound system. And they replaced it with another gym, which there were already two.
Seems redundant. It seems to take away a really good opportunity to watch movies with people.
Yes, that's why I was angry. As a film student, I'm sure you could understand my vitriolic rage.
Oh, Jesus. Oh my gosh. Yes, I remember you screaming very loudly by the pool in the middle of the night about that one.
Yeah,
And then,
it was scream worthy.
well, that was a fun night outside of like what it cost. Because that was actually
Yeah,
because we had a good hangout with Corey, Billy, and Tyler, talking a lot of sort of rotating between. We were rotating between so many topics that night. D&D, um, and other nerd culture stuff. I feel like we probably touched on like DBZ abridged, and
a
probably you guys
lot.
jumped into Hellsing or something. Um, But as I remember, I was leaving. I was like walking from the pool to the parking lot, and I saw a tow truck leaving with a sedan and went, "Oh, that sucks." And then I couldn't find my car. And I remember kind of where I parked. And then I came back and went,
They did it so fast and silently.
"Oh, it's ridiculous." Here's like I have the impression because that was if you were there, or you may or may not remember when we were actually at the tow truck company's location that night. They
Mhm.
had one tow truck, which means they literally probably picked mine up at the beginning of the night or something like that. Drove all the way to Forsyth from like the UCF side of town, which is like a 30-minute one way, and then drive all the way back to pick up Corey's car to take it all the way back.
Yeah,
And then we're hanging out in front of there for probably 30 minutes waiting for him to get back from his most recent catch.
disgusting predatory businesses.
Well, it was really ridiculous on account of there was available parking. There was like a massive parking lot way in the back of the damn complex.
But it was during, I think it was like the summer. Yeah, it was
Mm-hmm.
around the summer,
Well, your
and
graduation party
most
was a while away, so like maybe summer, like post spring semester was a bit away.
it was
But
still like nobody was there
yeah,
though. Like the apartment complex was primarily empty,
yeah.
and they dead ass like must have been like scanning like, oh, that guy pulled in. I'm gonna wait till he's gone. Then I'm gonna look at his car.
Oh,
Like,
I
how
bet
is that legal? That kind of business practice?
I think that's just the play. I don't I don't understand what kind of challenge they came into that led to we're gonna tow everyone that doesn't park where we want them to park. Uh,
I don't
like
think that it was necessarily a problem that occurred. I think it was that that housing person.
just got way
Like I said,
controlling.
extraordinarily.
Well, like
Um,
here's a question to ask. Going back to like your theater thing, is there any? Because I know there is. Because I we tried this, back when I was at Valencia. What films are like limited in terms of like giving a view to the public? So like, we were trying to figure out what movie or what sort of auditorium we could use or setting we could use to have like a big sort of cinematic event, and we found out we could only use Mockingbird or To Kill a Mockingbird, and there's like a limit of people you could show that to for free or for charge without having to like contact for licensure fees. But I don't feel like a 20 or 25 seat like side room at an apartment complex is going to be a legal fucking issue. It's just an extra large living room.
yeah,
And I don't feel like that's I feel like it's already there. Why are you going to go through buying a bunch of other fucking workout equipment to populate a third gym? Unless there like is there that much demand for a fucking gym?
I
At
really
a
didn't.
at a
So
at a complex of UCF students who automatically have membership to UCF's gym, which I'm gonna guess is like a 24-hour gym, and he's gone. Is he gone or am I gone?
I don't know why it did that.
You okay there, Aaron?
It said I was AFK.
I need to fix a setting. I need to fix a setting. I need to fix a setting. Please hold, everyone, while I fix this Discord server's setting because I'm gonna need you.
I was so confused. I'm
There's
like, but I'm right here.
there.
I'm at my keyboard.
Yeah, it's set up for an AFK channel, and now it's gone. No AFK channel. Cool. So now we are safe from that. My apologies.
It's okay. I forgive you.
All right, so then let's roll this backwards. Before we met, because that night ended well. We went to Forsyth, paid the money, took our cars home, and that was like 2 in the morning or something. It was
Yeah.
pretty straightforward, and I got paid back and everything. So if we're gonna get a little bit of the intro play here of where do you like what would you call your career and where would you say your career began, if anything like that?
When I was 11, if we're getting down to like the iota spark that created
This monstrosity.
where I'm at now. Um, I was at a party in Tennessee in like the Bellevue area. I was visiting my dad for the summer, and it was a block or a house party for one of our neighbors.
Mm.
And there was another group of neighbors there that was like the neighbors the house down from us. And I started talking to my dad, and I was just sitting there being awkward because I was a very awkward child who grew into a very awkward adult, but the kind of awkward that worked for me, you know.
Pretty
Um,
happy about this kind of awkward for some reason.
and so my dad's getting along really well with them, and I talked to one of his one of the people's children, and we get along well. And talked to his brother, his younger brother, and we get along well. My dad tells me we're gonna play a game, and I'm like, okay, what game? And it's like Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm like, I had only heard like vague, uh, like tellings of it, and I was like, okay. So he takes me to the shop. He buys this bunch of like old decrepit books. When I say decrepit, I mean they were falling apart because they were from the original sets.
Like the bindings are just like pulling apart. The glue is gone. It's just pages held
Yeah,
together by trust.
yeah. Trust in the destiny that was to follow. Um, so I pick up the book for the first time, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But 3 days later, I had read every book he had gotten, and that was near 1,000 pages worth of material. And I could tell at that time he was probably never prouder of me than those couple of days. And I'm like asking all these questions and building. I built two characters, Jareth and Clara.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One to be the kind of person that I wanted to be in real life, and one to be the kind of person I never thought I would be able to be. Um,
So a reasonably attainable character and then an impossible to attain character.
yes.
Okay.
Jareth was the attainable character.
Okay.
He was a warrior, which I attained. um, and he was like, I think 20 something. He was 6'2", with long brown hair and brown eyes. But he looks like how I see myself now. Like I didn't know that I was going to look like the character that I had imagined, but I think subconsciously I was just making a future image of myself as this character.
Even though you have black hair,
It's not. It's only black because of the lighting.
I always remember you with black hair, or you have brown hair that's
It,
that dark. Like I know my hair looks kind
it's a
of
very dark brown. In the
yeah.
summer, if I'm outside for more than 5 minutes, it gets actually pretty sandy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a lot more like my beard in color.
Mm-hmm.
And then Clara, who was this tiny demure elf, very graceful, uh, who studied magic.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was like, okay, why are you making these two characters? What do they have to do with each other? And he wasn't asking in like a confrontational way. He was
Yeah.
trying to prompt me. And so I made this whole story about how Clara was a refugee from somewhere and wasn't strongly adept at magic yet, and she was like getting bullied. And this kid who was an orphan who got adopted by a swordsman found her getting beat up and like defended her.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Jerry and Clarith. Jareth and Clara. Jareth and Clara. That was their story together. And eventually, throughout play, I ended up getting those two characters married, which now I realize as an adult is basically a child going with two action figures. Now, kid.
Kith, kith, kith. Kith, kith, kith.
Yeah, it's basically exactly like that.
You are the Korean director with his 2 Oscars.
And in the long terms of the story, they kept getting in situations where Clara kept dying. But death isn't nearly a permanent thing.
In D&D.
Yeah, so Jareth was really not okay with them continuing to do that. He had never died up until that point.
So wait, okay, let's break this down. This isn't you writing story. These are D&D stories, meaning that through chance, decision making, and the DM's God-given talents, or godlike talents, Clara, your ultimate impossible idea, keeps dying, while the attainable ideal, the attainable like character, just never dies.
He never died.
Like
ever.
It's almost like those that actually can exist in the real world are realistic and thus can survive, and those that are impossibly conceived actually cannot exist in the real world.
Indeed. So Jareth was having like really big issues with her dying because he was in love with her, and he was like, you gotta stop doing it. It was like, why is this any different than you doing it? It's like, because I don't die. Eventually, there's a mechanic when you die and come back, you could go crazy from it.
Okay.
Eventually, Clara developed like multiple personalities.
So comes with brilliance.
Yeah, from the tragedy of dying so many times. One was a dwarvish nursemaid. And this elf thought they were a dwarf who was helping someone deliver a child. Another was a prostitute who thought that Jareth was their best customer. And then I forget. Oh, the last one was a small child, like a cowardly, timid child. And it got to the point where it was basically making it impossible for them to like live any sort of life. So he went off on a journey, and I shit you not.
Okay, real quick.
Mm-hmm.
The minor context to this is that one, your DM is never letting your character actually just die and be gone forever. Because I remember that's one decision that can probably happen in a session.
Well, we also kept trying to bring them back whenever they did die.
Yeah.
They have a chance to fail and not ever be able to come back.
Yeah. But okay, so yours has always been able to come back thus far. So that happens. And this is all happening when you're like 12 and 13, I guess, or something?
It was over the years of role-playing that I did. It's just the continuation of these character stories.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear to everyone that this is like an 11 to teen with this character losing its fucking mind, not being able to permanently die and leave and have to create a whole fucking new one. And back to where you were about to go?
So Jareth was finally sick of it. He went and he found, and I shit you not, St. Nicholas. This was during one of our Christmas sessions.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Demanded from him a way to cure Clara's illness. And so he gave him a map to this device which separated souls that were trapped within the same vessel. And that was the last thing that ever happened. There was never any closure to that storyline.
So that's just hanging out there with like an old group that you used to play with?
Yep.
Great.
Well, you're like, God damn it, where's the resolution?
I'm just sitting here, just like, okay, what else happens? What else happens? Because I don't know if you got to listen to it. You should definitely go back and give it a listen to. This is the ninth episode, I believe. So episode 8 with Will Martin. He actually explains how to beat D and goes down that rabbit hole. So I will encourage people to. I should probably clip that and like put that in like a separate playlist or whatnot. But there is like this sort of end game to D actually, and he helped a friend realize this and get it actually approved by I guess the official um, council, I'd say. But I think it's just but like the people that run D. It's like, by the way, we've created an old one.
Like the god.
I think
Move.
there's a certain limit of like attaining beyond godhood like twice with one character or something like that makes you
Mm,
into an old one, and his friend did not realize that in over a decade of playing the game with like friends and then his children and then with Will there, that he'd actually created someone that was eligible and in fact an old one.
ha! Nice.
So Will's like, by the way, like this is about how far away we are, or you are, with your character from turning them into an old one because they are above like a wizard and they are infinitely able and powerful. In fact, like they're fighting another infinitely powerful, more devilish character and shit.
Right. And that was just my first two characters
Mm-hmm.
that I've played over the years. I've been 1,000 people at this point,
Right.
which I think is very helpful to anyone who's looking for any creative endeavors or
Mm-hmm.
looking to get into any creative endeavors. Play Dungeons and Dragons. Play any kind of role playing game.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what specifically the system is. It will teach you about creativity and creation and improv on the fly. Um, so, anyways, that's where
That's
my career started.
that's where you start. What led you to? Because to sort of educate out is that you actually have become a game creator in terms of tabletop or digital tabletop um, games. I don't think you've gone into any video game like things actually, but
Because
um,
I can't code.
can't code for shit. Uh, what what leads you to transition instead from just being a storytelling mechanic or player of D&D? Because we all know people that end up becoming filthy casuals of whatever they do. But then there's people that like want to transcend the meta of what they're currently playing and like define their own fucking thing. What what I guess intimated you towards making your own tabletop and card games?
Um, so after about a year of playing when I was 11,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't getting enough. It was like I was a little meth head.
You were a
And
thousand pages deep with two characters that you were running side by side in one campaign with a string of adults, and you're like, I need more than just this.
yes. That, in any situation, if that's how you feel about a thing, by the way,
Yeah,
that's a thing you need to follow. You need to
like
follow that feeling.
if you were, if,
Unless it's drugs. If it's drugs, don't do that. Don't do it.
well, that's that. I think that's you. Would you call that something equivalent to following your passion, like in a situation that might
Yeah,
actually be categorized as that, like follow your passion in a way? Because
100%.
I think that's a line I think that's overused because I think there's too much of find your passion and follow it, and that'll like lead you to a money making way of living your life or something like that.
Yeah,
But
and a lot of people don't know. Their question is, how do I find my passion? And I'm
yeah,
like,
then start doing things.
there's you do things, and when you find the thing that you can't not do,
Yeah,
that's a passion.
yeah, like things that you just willingly do that others would call work
Yeah,
just might be something on your list of passions.
I was extremely lucky that this was brought to me at such a young age, and that I was able to grow it from there.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that gives
and
you
I do,
that gives you 7 years of high school, middle
yeah,
school to, because I've kind of realized this at the moment I turned 18 and I had a job, any narrative game just fell away from my interest because that requires like I used to, when you played those games before, you didn't have a sense of time per se. Like you played that in your evenings or your weekend, and you just spend all of your time on that. Um, and when I turned 18, I just got like my hyper competitive came out, so I see that time of high school and pre as like almost unlimited time and ability to invest into something. Because after that, like work kicks in, and then you have to like figure out how to readjust, I guess,
Your
your
life.
time. Yeah, your time in your life. You have to become
So
more efficient, I think.
yeah. So I was 12, and I was like, I'm not getting enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I get my own books,
Yeah.
and I'm like, Dad, is there anything where you can make your own adventures? And he's like, yeah, that's how I, uh, do with you. And I'm like, okay. And that was the end of my questions for him. And then for a month, every day I spent like, I think 4 or 5 hours statting out and writing up dungeons and whatnot. Um, and then I invited some of my friends, and I was a little over ambitious at the time because I had, I think, maybe 8 people playing with 2 characters each. Because I had 2 characters, so I thought that's just how it was done. Yeah, no, that's why I don't run games with more than 4 people ever now. I'm just like 4 is my cap. Maybe 5 if I know everyone there, but nope, no more than 4.
Oh,
Not gonna do it.
do you limit them to one character each?
Yeah, now I do.
Yeah.
I'm just like, no, I'm not gonna fucking
You
no.
traumatized yourself as a as
I
a
did it. Absolutely, 100%. That's exactly what happened. Um, and so the day came. Everyone had fun, but
Mhm.
for me, it was like herding cats. But the cats had duplicates of themselves, and every cat also breathed fire.
Would you
Excuse
rather
me, I'm having
would
I'm
you
having a flashback.
would you rather fight a fire breathing bear or a fire breathing cat?
The bear. Because when I die, at least people can say he died to a fire breathing bear, and that sounds awesome. You die to a fire breathing cat, it's still a cat.
Okay, I guess my correction is tiger. But
Oh,
if you know anything about grizzly bears, they are actually the apex predator of the globe. Grizzly
indeed.
bears,
Just why still the bear?
right? Jesus Christ.
Hashtag, if I'm gonna die to the best predator on the planet.
So you're overly ambitious. You're overly ambitious with your friends there, and there's like how many? They had two characters each.
16 characters in total. Um,
Oh, I feel like the pace of that game was snail pace.
no, it was not good. It was
Oh
not good at all.
God. Oh God.
Um,
I'm waiting for
I
initiative
used
for
I used
five
the
years.
term I use the term jump cut frequently. So after that, I was still invested, which tells you something. I
Like
didn't.
you set yourself up for the thickest, most slowest, most caudacious like session. How long was that session? Do you remember?
I think it was like 5 hours.
So a 5 hour grind. Did they even
Yeah.
leave the first bar or the first like location?
They got all the way to the first town, and I think the first couple rooms of the dungeon.
Okay.
But that being said, I was trying to keep them in a dedicated pace.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't let them stay in one area too long.
Mhm.
I was much more railroady as a child,
Yeah.
um,
Fear.
because my head was, this is my story. You're all just people in it, which is not the mindset to have. And I'm basically like, now I'm super zen about it. I'm like, yeah, do whatever the fuck you want, man. I mean, the other day somebody literally launched a nuclear silo in one of my games, And I didn't stop him at any point. I'm like, yeah, just fucking push the button, man. It's all good. And he blew up an entire riverside civilization because they wouldn't give him water. And he was a robot. He didn't need the
I
water.
forget if it's have you I know you've met Billy. Have you met Evan yet?
Probably. I have a bad memory.
I'm not sure if you have yet because I actually have not had Evan on any podcast yet actually. Um Other than the beta ones back when we were testing out JHP. Um he's apparently the one that anytime they come into a town, his immediately move is to find and kill the sheriff, which isn't nuclear, but
Wow.
it's the epitome of I'm always here to fuck shit up. I am nothing but a fuck shit up person.
I want to play a game with them only because a lot of my games, I run them very realistically. People wouldn't just stand by and watch their sheriff get killed.
unless you're
That's
in
not how communities work.
unless you're in Django, unless it's Django Unchained.
See, that's the thing, though. They didn't watch him just get killed. The guy did it really quickly. They didn't have time to respond, and then he was, like, not resistant to the
Yeah.
law. That's what I love about that character. He's the only person that I could say would be a murder hobo, but not killed immediately.
Yeah.
Because he's like, he shoots the person dead, and he's like, take me to the law. I'll explain everything.
It's like I dare you to try me for neglecting the law on account of it's very clear that I know what the law fucking is.
Exactly. So anyways, I was 12, went through the game, still wanted to do it. And over the years, I actually kept working on the same dungeon. And
Okay. Well, so when you say dungeon, you mean like whole universe, basically.
um well, I mean it expanded into that.
Yeah, but you went from
But when
like
I say dungeon, I mean that dungeon.
so you have one dungeon and your like relative, and like you have one dungeon that can basically just go down to hell. That you've just expanded that far, like it's the ultimate Zelda adventure, like it's a one dungeon
Nope.
Zelda game.
Nope. It's levels 1 to 4.
Hmm.
I rewrote it 27 times.
You counted the rewrites.
Yes.
Okay.
And the reason, and I have other dungeons for higher levels and stuff like that. But the reason I rewrote this specific one 27 times, it was the first dungeon I ever wrote.
Yeah.
I added plot elements and characters and like real story to it. And it became about a town that has suffered numerous like casualties, or not casualties, atrocities over the years, but it's still standing. Kind of like Tornado Alley, how people, for some
Just
reason,
keep rebuilding.
Yep.
Well, it's like Florida and tourists.
Yeah. And so I wrote that 27 times. The 27th time was like 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last rewrite I did of it, and that was the moment when I looked at it and I'm like, I'm satisfied.
Okay.
And during that time period, I've worked on all manner of other stuff.
Yeah, but you kind of always come back to, that one. Just is that like where you just always are picking for perfect? Because it feels like that's the foundational block that you started with.
Yeah, and I think that's why. It was, in my eyes, the real start of me becoming creatively self-aware.
Like instead of being creative and thinking everything's golden, but becoming creative and recognizing flaws over and over.
Yes, like that, because I was able to critique my own work
Yeah.
through that, and figure out what was full of plot holes, what story elements I needed to add, why something didn't work in a certain position. That first dungeon is still very tropey, but tropes, and this is always true, people, tropes are not a bad thing.
Well,
There's a
nothing.
reason they're tropes.
There's nothing that's actually original.
Right.
So
But
why not actually rotate the originalities just well enough that they smell fresh?
exactly, one of the characters that I added to it, and he's one of my favorites, is Mooneye Truffle Hog Rockgut, and he is a dwarf who was so much of a trope of what dwarves were that most of the people who encountered him said he wrapped right back around to being fun and original.
Like it's like this character is so meta. Like he's such the meta of actually like that character that he
Yeah, that
becomes his own
archetype.
character. It's that's fascinating because it's almost like you're gonna have every element of this classic version of this character that it becomes a unique character somehow. Like it's almost like stereotyping the hell out of it, and then they fit all the stereotypes, but then they find like an essence that's truly off like original, I guess.
Yeah, and that's pretty much how it was described to me when I asked them other people why they liked the character. I liked the character because it was very straightforward, and he didn't seem super complex,
Yeah.
um, but he didn't need to be. And over time, he actually, I realized, was more complex than I thought he was. That character ended up going through this whole arc with a group of people where he became like king of the dwarves, and they were actually supporting his ascension instead of trying to be the king themselves.
Yeah.
Like the characters, like he didn't want to be king, and they were like, "No, you need to be king." He's like, "But I'm not king material," and they're like, "Listen, we get that you're scared, but you're clearly the best option for this." And so the characters supported his rise to the throne, and it was weird to see that because I so expected one of them to just make a power grab. That's kind of what I was hoping for,
Were you
you
playing
know.
this character, or was this just was this a character being?
No, it was a character that was an NPC.
Oh, okay. Non-player character, right?
Yeah, non-player character.
Yeah.
Um, and the other players, one of them was playing his nephew. They were all dwarves though.
Yeah.
Because
So
that
all
was
the
like the premise.
PCs look to the NPC and they look to the non-human and say, "You are our man now. You are the god now."
Basically. Um, in terms of when I started branching out from just doing role playing stuff, I think I was about 18 or 19 at the time
Mm-hmm.
when I realized the only thing I knew of role playing was Dungeons and Dragons, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But for me, it felt like I now had such a limited toolbox because I knew there was other things in the world that I just didn't know about. So I started looking into other RPG systems, and then I looked at Dungeons and Dragons, and I was like, this rule's stupid. I don't like this rule. I'm going to do this instead. And all my players were like, okay. And then we played with it for a little bit, and they were like, that's pretty cool. It works better now.
So you were
And I was like,
optimizing that version of D&D in a way, or
yeah, I was running first edition at the time.
oh, okay.
Um,
They're like on edition like 4 or 5 now, right?
they're on fifth edition.
Fifth edition, yeah.
Um, which the only one that I really love out of those is the newest iteration, which is fifth edition. Fourth edition, I thought was at the time that it came out, I lauded it as basically an unholy sacrament, an affront to God. Um, but I realized that was me just parroting my father's words.
Oh,
Um, I was a kid. I wanted his approval. Um,
yeah.
as an adult, looking at the system's well made for what it was trying to do. The problem is they didn't get the tools that they needed for that system made because it was originally meant to launch online. Fourth edition was. Um, with all sorts of tools to help play online because people were starting to play online,
Yeah.
or like voice calls and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, and it just didn't translate very well to paper and pen, which is fine. You know, they had a specific goal in mind for it. The great part about fourth edition's designs, though, was the enemies. They had really interesting combat mechanics. But I was running first edition at the time, and I kept changing rules to it. And eventually, I was talking to people, and they're like, "You know, we're not playing D&D anymore, right?" And I'm like, "Huh?" Because I thought it was just like saying we're not going to play with you anymore. And I was like, "Yeah, it's not Dungeons and Dragons. You've made it your own thing." And I'm like looking over it, and I'm like, I realized I had a 20-page document with all these different rule iterations that I had done.
A 20-page document?
Yeah, that's how it started.
Wait, okay, because I think I heard you on, okay, 20 different rule changes, like one line a piece, like a one-pager, but 20 items. No, it's a 20-page side man. Okay, that. So,
Yeah. And I was looking over it, and I'm like, they're like, "You made your own system." And I'm like,
apparently I did.
and they're like, "You should like try and expand on it because you're using all these things from, you know, the old game that they don't really belong here anymore." And I'm like, "You're right."
You're about to be the 6th edition writer.
Um, so I started expanding on all of the systems that I had implemented, and I made my own races, or rather, I didn't make my own races. I made my own takes on the races that existed.
Yeah.
I did eventually make my own races. One of them was a Bavarian, which is like a weasel person.
Mm-hmm.
And before I knew it, I had like 80 pages. With wholly unique systems that were my game entirely. Which, now that I think about it, is hilarious because that took me like, I think 4 or 5 years to get that much done.
Yeah.
During that time period, I was going through a lot of like weird, different emotional stuff. Though I was taking.
What was that high school area? High school, middle school area?
No, really, I got most of my work for that done when I was 19 to graduating college.
So actually, in the last like 6 years per se.
Basically.
Yeah.
And the reason I laugh at getting 80 pages done in that time frame is I got 60 pages done in 2 months when I was in Vegas with my dad, helping manage him for the World Series of Poker.
Your dad was a player?
Yeah.
Nice.
You got busted out kind of early, though, because of a very bad set of hands.
Ooh.
It was one of those situations where there was nothing he could have done any differently. He played the game right.
Yeah.
It just wasn't in his favor.
Yeah.
Which is why poker is still gambling, kids. No matter how much a skilled poker player will tell you it's not, it is a little bit of gambling.
Yep. Still chance being played into it.
So anyways, in that 2-month period, I wrote 60 pages of a setting called Rad Wasteland.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward to now, I have 128 pages of that setting done after I basically had to rewrite the entire book.
Yeah.
Because of the way that the Fantasy Flight Games third-party laws work. They're not open license, which means that you can't use their system to create your own like settings and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
which is something great about Dungeons and Dragons. They're pretty much always open license after the first 6 months of
Yeah.
release,
Yeah.
because they actually want people to
Innovate.
make and innovate. Yeah. So I was working on it at the start of what you call it, the Corona thing, because I had all this free
Corona thing.
time.
Yeah, Corona thing. No big deal.
I mean, it wasn't for me. I've just been in this attic for like 2 months now, day after day.
Day after day, slogging
Um,
away with this mouse and keyboard.
and so in 2 months, I rewrote the 60 pages I had and added 68 pages, and now I have 60 backgrounds for character customization. I
For just like a whole
have,
nother version of D&D, basically.
yeah, and it's a narrative system, meaning that it's not binary in success and failure. So you know how in Dungeons and Dragons you roll a dice and you either succeed or you fail at a task,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You can the most variation is you get a critical success or a critical failure.
Yeah, it's a 3-way split. Or a 4-way split. Crit
Right.
failure, failure, succeed, critical succeed.
So that's really just using one dimension of storytelling,
Yeah.
the dimension of failure and success. It all goes on one line.
Effectively, yes.
The Fantasy Flight game system started using a set of dice that had 3 symbols on positive dice and then 3 symbols on negative dice.
Mm-hmm.
The positive dice had success, advantage, and triumph. The negative dice had failure, threat, and I forget the name of the opposite of triumph, but it's like I'm just going to call it like a catastrophe or something.
Okay.
And what that does is you have the binary of success and failure on one line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you also have the line of advantage and threat. And then on top of that, you have a Z delta of triumph and catastrophe. So now your story elements have 3 dimensions in which they can travel. You can succeed at something, but cause something bad to happen through that success. You can fail at something, but you can fail forward through that. You can succeed at something in such a triumphant way as to absolutely crush everyone, or you can succeed at something and it causes the worst possible result. You're muted, buddy.
Because I don't want to have the keystrokes. So instead of the binary, have you created sort of like a tertiary, quadrary set of...
It's tertiary.
It's tertiary, yeah. Which I think the math on that would be exponential. So you had the 3 phases of...
if you did it just based off of numbers...
Oh, it's instead of squaring it, you've cubed it.
Yeah, which is why they did it off of symbols rather than any numbers. So I was like, I really like this system of storytelling because it's much more in-depth. You, as an improvisational kind of person, I think would vastly prefer this system to Dungeons and Dragons.
Possibly.
Go ahead.
I have the unfortunate thing of that I've had very little like minuscule experience in play. I've had a one-off with Josh, who we almost got to hang out with on the last podcast. I've had 2 sessions at most with a friend Lee, and that was just a 2-character arc. And that was one of his first campaigns that he orchestrated. So like episode 1, like half the fucking night Like we're learning how to like fill our character sheets, but also he's creating like a very good, masterful like scene and arc, or just like he just it was one of those where it's like you're better off listening to the motherfucker tell a story than play the fucking game. Because unfortunately, it was Melanie and I, so newbies with a new um, DM and no veterans. Like that's the room.
Yeah.
Three newbies trying to jump into D&D with only one person, the DM, having any back and forth.
You have to have very, very, very strong D&D players in order to be able to kind of contend with a DM that's very, very good at storytelling like that.
Yeah.
I disagree, because for all my experience that I've had, I've guided a complete group of new players through how to play the game and have fun doing it. But then again, I've also been doing this for over half my life.
Well, I didn't hear half of that, so I'm gonna kiss Aaron and go away.
I'm right here. Why aren't you giving me a kiss?
What?
She want give him a kiss somehow. I don't. There you go.
Yay!
You soft bun.
I am. I mean, all that being said, what it sounds like is there's scheduling issues for you, or not for you, for the other people involved.
Yeah, there was. There definitely was. There definitely was for that situation. Oh, I have to
So
finish that.
with that, I invite an opportunity for you and Melanie. Just make a time that you want to play, and I'll work around it.
Word. Well, I think we would appreciate that if well, we stopped doing that with our friend Lee. Um, Out of it became a sense of obligation and not something we looked forward to. And whether that had to do with where we were at the time in terms of what we want to spend our time on, and also how the experience had gone for us.
That's fair.
There's something to be said about taking dancing lessons with someone who is passionate about it, but their teaching style or their experience level or something like that doesn't cater to it, or there's something in your life that just makes you go, I have to spend my time somewhere else right now. But
Yeah, I get that.
but like for the well, and then I don't think Melanie took part in Josh's one-off campaign that we did, because Josh has attempted to do this with our the regular Discord group that I'm with, and it fell apart in a way in that two of them kind of fucked around and really sort of pissed off the DM, but it became that dilemma of how much can you piss off the DM before the DM actually loses, because it's almost 2 a.m. and this wasn't supposed to go on for more than 6 hours or something like that.
I don't do that. Like if there's people fucking around, I'm like, do you want to be here or do you want to leave?
Yeah, yeah.
Because if it's that bad, like the way you're describing it, I'm just like, listen, there are people who want to
Well,
play the fucking game.
well, that's where they would describe bullshit of like, I'm running around screaming everywhere in this cave that we like just got into or something like that. Or one of them suggesting, how about you strength test and punch the wall? Like, exactly.
Like idiots.
Like it's I think it was just one of those where Josh was really like hopeful on it, and while there are some of us that could have been more about it, he just hasn't gone back to it, either because of his family, the needs of the family, or just the ability to have a regular thing. Because, I mean, the unfortunate thing about, at least for me, and I think Melanie and I are both like this, is that dedicating ourselves to something weekly has to have a very, very good fucking reason. Like, since I turned 18 and left sports, I have not dedicated myself to anything weekly at all outside of school, other than ballroom dance.
Mm.
Ballroom dance has been the only thing that and there was a lot of reasons that went into that, between the girl that I was wanting to take to that, to like swooner, and then continue going in spite of her, breaking my heart and everything, and going, no, I want to learn this shit. Fuck her. Um, that's been the only shit, because I was putting my money on that, and that ended up being able for me to give a piece of art that I helped choreograph and make and produce and record, and give that to my mom while she was in the hospital, like months before she passed. Um, and I still laugh hilariously about that moment I show her to her. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I know exactly where you're at, honey, because you and I were we get into something, we're like, just like laser beam focused, because she just read it on my face and shit." So that was like a really good fun moment, like with an iPad in the middle of Winter Park Hospital. Um, so that's the only reason we've had with D&D, and that's where I think, especially with Melanie's issue, we're doing Hotbox voice cast. Um,
Hey,
the only reason she isn't a part of the next episode with the Avengers 2012 is because it's been so frequent that it's drained her introvert energy. And so this monthly version might actually bring her in better. Um, So between, it has to have a good reason for us to devote to it weekly of anything, and two, there's so many things we want to do or cycle through that if we were to do a D&D session, for me, I'd probably have to commit a production element to it, um,
Mhm.
because I've had it in my mind for a long time that I'm not doing anything unless I am using it um, towards a greater goal.
I
Um,
got you.
and I've learned how to just schedule vacation time and go out into the woods and fuck around, so to speak. Shout out to my boy Jose, who just got married in his bachelor party. Um, but I'm way too efficient of a personality to commit time consciously and not do everything I can to maximize it. Like that's where,
That's fair.
like, the Hotbox voice cast is, at its base, is Tyler's project, but if he wants to do a pure audio version but gives me the freedom to create a video side of it with like character images, webcam capture of the actors, um, with text and intro pieces, like create a relative video interaction of it, to showcase the physicality out of the voice actors, show who their faces actually are, present their names very clearly to like grab better at connecting to the actors. Um, I just see it as a better way to market people. So whether or not that actually brings pseudo to a higher level of clout, or just distinctly provides good marketing for the people that I work with, I that's kind of how I think about it. And that extends to like a lot of the shit that I do. It's kind of
Yeah.
where I almost it's kind of where I stream like every night, even if it's probably for like just 2 or 3 hours.
Mm.
It's like I might as well be on.
But that's why I said whenever you feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no
There's-
there's no set time limit to it. I just want you to enjoy,
yeah.
role playing games.
Well, I'll say this last thing because I did want to say this before. I want to be better about getting the businessy side out of me and getting more the improv side of me out. To be more free to, I guess the simple line is to be silly, or to be consciously creative. So I become unconsciously present, I guess.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
What were we talking about before we got
We were
on?
going into how you actually ended up creating your own gaming systems for tabletop and
Right.
D&D like stuff.
So, yeah, over the past 2 months, I've rewritten the entire book, and I've added 60 something pages to it. There's now an entirely unique set of weapons in the game. The game is just a little bit survivalist, in that you actually do have to manage like your resources. But that goes hand in hand with the setting, which is like this desolate, barren United States. So like it is now, just with more fire. Um, but basically, the only places that have survived are the coastal cities. And New Orleans is the strongest city in the entire coastal union because they have the Mississippi River, which is a source of fresh water. And fresh water is one of the most important resources to, being alive. And so because they have such a vast flowing filtration system, because a river in itself, people, is actually a type of filtration system for water. They're now one of the superpowers of the coastal union.
Who knew New Orleans would be important after Katrina?
We don't say it like that. What? It's
Wait, I'm sorry. I have to throw this in. Do you watch any stand-up?
every once in a while.
Do you watch? Do you have Netflix or have access to Netflix?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, then you need to watch like Tom Segura's, I think, 2 most recent specials. His most recent one is Ball Hog, but it has a joke in there that references his previous special where he talks about New Orleans. So, to anyone out there, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you have your homework.
And so I realized when I did the reading on how they did their third-party systems, I'm like, well, I can just keep making the game, as a passion project. And then a bunch of people were like, no, you should make your own system. And I'm like, but guys, it's not that easy. And they're like, yeah, but you're you. And I'm like, I guess. And I'm just like, I'm just gonna keep doing what I was doing. And I laid down to sleep. And then 3 hours later, I woke up and my brain was like, you have to do it. I was like, fuck! And I spent 12 hours with the rising sun, mind you, which I'm a nocturnal person. So me being awake while the sun is going up is fucking heresy to me. So I spent the next 12 hours basically rewriting how the system works with a new set of dice and a whole new set of probabilities for how the game is supposed to work. And I made the cascade system. And the reason I call it that is because it goes down like a waterfall from the largest dice to the smallest dice. And essentially, and I'll explain exactly how it makes sense, the more skilled you are at something, the less chance you have to fuck up, right?
Yeah.
So you go from the largest dice, which is a D12, down to a D6. That's where you're pretty skilled at something. And you go from that to a D4, which is the highest level of skill you can apply to a dice in that game. The D12 has 2 sides with blanks on it, a bunch of sides with only 1 symbol on it, a couple sides with 2 good symbols on it, and then 1 side with like a critical success. And the same thing is applied to the inverse on like the negative side. So everything that I'm saying for the good dice also applies for the bad dice. When you get down to the D6, there are no blank faces on a dice. Only 2 faces have 1 symbol on them, and every other face has 2 symbols or the critical success symbol.
Okay.
And then when you get down to the D4, it only has 2 symbols on each face, which means you have no chances to just get one thing or a blank. And every roll of a D4 is basically going to be you getting either 2 successes, 2 advantages, or a success and an advantage, or the critical success, the triumph.
And the inverse, of course, and the opposite of that.
And the inverse of it.
So, so you never have a success failure moment. You have a success advantage, or success critical, so to speak.
No, there's there is the contention. So whenever you're rolling
Mhm.
your die pool, you build your positive dice, and then the GM tells you what the negative dice are in that pool.
Do you only have these in digital form, or have you actually created physical replicas of what these dice would be?
I actually am talking to somebody about seeing if you would
Make physical
print
die.
those dice.
Nice.
Yep. But right now, excuse me, I only have a digital
Representation.
representation of those dice. If you want, I can actually show you on Roll20 what those dice look like.
Yeah. Let me see if I can figure out how to make an easy view of that. Huh. Let me think. Might have to create a new scene for this. Do you have an image? Is it just gonna be a straight image?
No, I was just gonna roll a couple of the dice. I sent you the link.
Okay, let's see here. Rad Wasteland. I already have an account in Roll20, and I'm not authorized.
So I don't know if you can see all the buttons on the bottom when you click into it, when you like press launch game. But there's a bunch of bottom.
I have a not authorized. Either you are not logged in or do not have access to this page, and I am logged in with like my name.
Hold on. Try this instead.
Red Wasteland launch game, right?
Correct. I gave you the link to my view of the launch,
Oh, okay.
which was the problem. Sorry about that. All right. So, oh God, I can hear myself. Settings wheel in the upper right-hand corner. Click on that.
Settings. Yep.
And you want to go down to, I think it's chat tech. Or
I want to broadcast to others.
just put it to none.
Yeah, nothing. So save beast to that. Okay, I guess that updated it. Are you still hearing me?
Not in the thing. I can set
Okay,
you
cool.
here though. So, do you see a bunch of buttons on the bottom of the screen?
No. I see
Okay.
our two faces.
So I think if you click on like the three bars with three dots next to the setting wheel,
Yeah.
it should say collection. You can click on that. You'll see the name for a bunch of macros.
Yeah, 1B, 1K, 10, 1P, or 10. Yeah.
Right. So those are all the different dice. You don't need to add them to your bar. But let's say that you are trying to do something with like a strength test or something, like you're trying to lift a boulder, but you have no skill in athletics. It's a big boulder, but you're pretty strong. You're like 3 strength. So I'm going to have you roll 3 purple. That's your set of dice. Versus 3 red dice. So the red dice populate. Then you compare those the symbols that you roll. A bullet is a success. A horseshoe is luck, and a water droplet is a salvation symbol. But you didn't get a water droplet. You weren't lucky enough.
Okay. So are you showing this anywhere here on screen? Because otherwise I just have the graph and stuff, right?
Oh, if you look on the right-hand side where the chat is, you should be able to see
okay.
the dice.
Okay. Alrighty. Oh, wow. That's a lot of things happening way earlier. Way before I got here, I guess.
Yeah, just scroll all the way to the bottom.
Roll 20. Okay. So, let me... Okay, that's live. Okay, cool. So, roll 3T base die with 3 symbols, the horseshoe, and 2 bullets?
Yes. So that's the positive dice that you rolled.
Okay.
It's a Western
Themed
game at its core, so.
Oh, okay. I was about to be
that's why bullets are good.
I didn't know orcs had horses and guns.
No, that's not. This game doesn't have.
What in tarnation's happening here at Helm's Deep?
And then the negative dice on the bottom
Are red, like
are red.
Nazis.
Sure, yes, like Nazis. So
Damn
you
commies.
got two
Bull.
skulls, a snake bit, and a radiation symbol,
Snake
which is
bit?
the worst.
Yeah, okay, I can see the snake. I can see the snake. Can I zoom in enough
Which
to
is-
actually?
Yeah, you can zoom in on.
There we go.
Which is actually the radiation symbol is the worst symbol in the game.
Obviously.
So
Of course it would.
success and failure cancel each other out. So your success, you have 2. You also have 2 failure, but the skull is failure, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So you have no success and failure at the moment.
Uh-huh.
Your luck and snake bit, which is actually an old Western term meaning unlucky,
Mm-hmm.
cancel each other out. So you have nothing there. All that's left is that radiation symbol.
Okay, let's do this. So, what are we comparing the purple roll to the red roll right now?
Correct.
Okay. So the bullets and the
Skulls.
no, so the bullets and the skulls are positives.
Oh, excuse me. The bullets in the horseshoe
Are positive because they're purple. If they're red, if they're red, they're negative, right? Like that's
correct.
The color would represent what this symbol equates to.
All the negative dice are
Red.
Red. Well, no, they're red, orange, and black.
Because of the 3 different versions of negativity, as well as there's 3 different versions of
Right.
positivity. Okay.
Red is the simplest one.
Mm-hmm.
I think black is the second, and then orange is definitely the worst.
Okay. So, begin again, and I'm getting more drunk as this goes. Because this is like the rest of a Jaeger bottle, rum, and then like a dash of amaretto.
A Jaeger bubble. All right. So you have 2 bullets, which count as 2 successes, and a horseshoe, which counts as 1 luck. You have 2 skulls, which count as failures, and 1 snake bit, which counts as snake bit. Snake bit is an old Western term meaning unlucky.
Okay.
Success and failure cancel each other out. So the bullet and the skull cancel each other out.
Uh-huh.
If you had more bullets than you had skulls, you'd be left with bullets, meaning success.
So because of this, okay, because I can see the cursor, good. So that's where 1 bullet matches 1 skull, 2nd bullet matches the other skull, but the horseshoe will match the snake bite, leaving just the radiation left over.
Correct.
Okay.
So basically, you just got the worst symbol in the game and nothing else.
Well, isn't this a great example for people to become attracted to your game?
So if you were trying to lift the boulder, I could basically just be like, the boulder crushes you, you take X amount of damage, and I'm being very simple here.
Yeah, the boulder laughed and gave you kidney cancer. Have fun.
The boulder takes you for a ride.
We used to ride. The pioneers used to ride these babies all over the yard.
So let's say that you're trying to lift the same boulder, but you've got some skill, like 1 skill's worth of training and athletics.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to have you roll 2 purple and 1 blue, because the blue dice is you're a little bit skilled at something. Oh, wow. Fucking golly gee.
I am acquiring sexual relations, am I not?
Versus the 3 red that the rock represents.
Oh.
Okay, well, shit.
Okay, that just got neutralized quadruple over. I just
went
from fully erect dick to now there's an axe on my dick.
Now hold on. This isn't necessarily bad. This is what makes this system interesting. You got 2 salvation. That's the best symbol in the game. It can't be canceled out.
Salvation being the water? The droplet? Yes. Okay.
Salvation counts as a success and some sort of narrative implement that'll move the story forward.
And the horseshoe is lucky.
Is lucky, yes. However, you got 4 snake bit.
All the unluck.
So one of them gets canceled out by your horseshoe, and then you still have 3 snake pit left. So the 2 salvation, you succeed and you change something about the narrative in your favor, basically.
Right.
So when you lift the rock, and again, this is a very simplistic example, you find the 6 shooter of justice underneath the rock. However, the threat is when you place the rock down, the 6 shooter of justice rolls down the mountain into the pit of despair.
This is okay. I think my first impression is that well, yeah, my first drunken impression with your game system is that it might come because I think because of familiarity over like decades is that D&D is very easy to run. I think your game will be easy to run. The learning curve will be inferred or presumed as complicated because it's symbolic and it's like, but it demands narrative push, and that's I think that's what because I've barely played D&D, but I love D&D memes. I love D&D culture, and it is definitely something that I wish I was doing more of. I don't think I've ever mentioned to you my idea of getting a 2-group system on a stage where like there's a D&D game happening either in the orchestra pit or on stage, like on the left side of the stage, but then on the other side of the stage or on just the stage itself in the orchestra pit version, there's an improv group acting out with or without props everything that's happening in the campaign.
I think you vaguely mentioned that.
Yeah, I mentioned this. I mentioned this to Cody at Tyler's birthday. This is one of my, and I've heard this idea. I believe that any idea you have can be original, and I think many people across the world can come up with the same idea in the same time period, which I think is like the ether of the universe trying to penetrate a great idea into the world, and one dumb fucker is going to get charcoal to paper before another, and that's how great poetry is made.
'Twas me, the dumb motherfucker with the charcoal.
Yeah, well, that's a play out. If you've ever listened to that TED talk from the woman that wrote Eat, Pray, Love, the Julia Roberts movie from the woman's book, is that it's a ancient redefining of genius, and it was only during the Renaissance or Enlightenment period when genius got put on the person, as opposed to genius was something that was from another ether. It's the example she gives is where you have the tribal dance happening. You know, picture it Africa, of course, like some people will, but you have a certain point where like one dancer performs to like this ungodly level, like they're just channeling the cosmos, and the next day they're just exhausted and empty because they know they can't reach that again. But it's the weight of that cosmic spiritual experience, that moment of genius, is sent out to the stars, is sent out to another element that is not their responsibility. And
it's the philosophy of there being a perfect example of every possible thing in the universe that we all pull from as our creative works. Like every chair, there is a perfect chair somewhere in the ether that is without flaw. It is the greatest chair that ever existed, and every other chair that was ever made, including the first chair, was just an idea that somehow was pulled from that chair.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like some weird philosophical. You're infecting me with the drunk.
Something
or I'm
like
just
that.
an idiot.
There she is. Elizabeth Gilbert. There she is. Copy link
Right.
address. Okay, I'm going to send that to you, and you can enjoy that at will. Let me just... There we go. Streamer in mode enabled. Okay. But yeah, so I think...
Yeah, you're right. There are people who are intimidated by the fact that this isn't just a dice with numbers.
Well, I think what's so fascinating about that, just when I run like the simulation in my head, is that this demands narrative development. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's something that is expected out of a D&D campaign. It sort of is almost a system that demands you provide more based on just the dice roll. Like, as much as the dice roll provides chance and then it sort of falls on the DM to decide whether or not that equates to absolute success, even if it's like a 19 or even a 20. This says, no. This dice roll demands narrative.
Yep.
So, like, the number that would play out, that would equal success of lifting the boulder, sure, that happens. But now the DM must create narrative that builds this up.
from the symbols that he was granted.
Yes.
And obviously severity could play, a hand in that. Like, you got 3 snake symbols. That was bad, which is why the gun fell down into the pit of despair.
Yeah.
But let's say you got a radiation symbol as well, which radiation and salvation don't cancel each other out.
Yeah.
They exist as their own
Separate evils.
So you find the 6-shooter of salvation, and when you place the rock down, you accidentally place it on the 6-shooter, breaking the gun.
And
Something like that.
I always love trying to think of present moments as hindsight moments. And because you're sitting there like 6 years later, 6 sessions later, 20 years later going, I could have had that fucking thing. It broke. It broke as I fucking found it. And that is such a massive emotional moment. It's so fucking great. Like,
Yeah.
I wish I had more actual basic 5e D&D experience to be able to more effectively like deliberate this. But as someone who's just like survived off D&D memes and sees this and goes like, there's so much easy like, I would call it hindsight audience commentary, even as a player, that lets you go like, but that moment was so fucking great. Because when you're a player, you can't emote to it like an audience member does. But I think once you are outside of the game, like post game and like with time, you can then become an audience member to your own tragedy. And that just makes it so much more infinitely like. I think it's what it's the human trick of being able to laugh at your own pain after you've gotten over cancer, basically.
Schadenfreude. So another interesting part, at least I believe, about the system is most of the classes in the system aren't combat based.
Well, D&D has a lot of combat, like sort of focus to it.
D&D is a combat game.
Mm-hmm.
It is a combat simulator.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But there's not as much narrative in combat as there is in the rest of life.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to build this around facilitating that rather than nothing but combat.
So like, was this a point that your supporting friends made? That your system was developing into a more narrative theme per se in its design, and that, I guess, maybe to that crowd, but provided a more attractive draw to it than just the combat theme of classic D&D.
Yeah, maybe. They weren't very clear about it when they were.
Well, most people aren't good at articulating why they like things.
Yeah,
It's like, it makes my penis feel good. Like, that's not a lot of analysis. Like,
but that's why I like it. And at the end of the day, oh wait, out of context, I was not talking about his penis. Although I do like his penis. Don't get me wrong. It's very squirrely and delicious. Can you pass me the drink?
oh god. I think I'm gonna cramp my not my quad, my hamstring. I'm gonna cramp my hamstring.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Well, if I keep drinking, there's hope yet.
So that's why I like the system I made, because I always wanted to play more games where you weren't necessarily some great hero because you killed something.
Mm-hmm.
You might be a hero because you discovered something.
Yeah.
Or you brought back some piece of knowledge. Which this is a society, the system is based around a society where there was a time when everybody had water easily accessible. They know that it exists. They refer to it as the last age. But because of what happened, we basically suffered a dark age.
Yeah.
So we've recessed as a people to almost feudal era styles of living. And about 70 or I think it's either 70 or 80% of the U.S. is not able to be populated.
Because of it's been irradiated or what?
Because it's been irradiated and turned into a barren. So most of the central U.S. is basically desert. That doesn't have a lot of water-based resources for people to go into on a whim, and thus it can't be populated. The only area within the U.S. that's still populatable is the Great Lakes and the track that the Mississippi River runs along.
Mm-hmm.
The Mississippi River is our Nile.
Yeah.
In this scenario.
Yeah.
Everywhere else is pretty much a blasted hellscape. But within that hellscape, there are old technological factories. There are bands of people somehow surviving on the fringes of society off of irradiated water and these minuscule resources.
What was the name of that series? You reminded me of a book series that I actually listened to while I was working my pharmaceutical job. Peter Jackson just did a version of it.
Oh, the big car.
Yeah, the moving cities, Mortal Engines.
Mortal Engines. Yeah,
Mortal Engines. Okay, so that's a trilogy of a book of a book series. I've listened to all of them. You can probably listen to it if okay. How do I phrase this? You can listen to all 3 books in 3 days if you have an 8-hour shift that lets you listen to books while you work. Yeah, that's the math. Because I was listening to it through the Seminole County Library, which had it on Audible, or you could get it through their website, or through their link. Basically, it goes to an age beyond ours, where they have cities or whatnot that are able to become mobile, and then they become able to eat other cities. So
that sounds really cool.
It's a different level of, it's a certain type of Darwinism that they adopt that creates the philosophy of the whole world. And America becomes this other barren wasteland because there's like another great war that happens. America becomes a something barren wasteland, but it becomes sort of an ice barren wasteland in terms of what happens in the second book, so to speak. The world is fascinating. Some of the mentor-like heroes are great, but the main characters are not compelling to me. It's sort of the issue that I had with Ransom Riggs' Peculiar series with Miss Peregrine's Peculiar Children. The main character is not likable. The only character you like becomes... she doesn't become a Susan. She's just not... You end up seeing... I think I saw her end up becoming limited, or the actions or the situations limited her ability to influence them, so it had to fall to the uninteresting main character.
Right.
But your barren wasteland in America becoming a barren wasteland in this age afterwards, it reminds me of Mortal Engines. Yeah. So if you want to listen to a free audiobook, if you can figure out how to hack into the New York City Library or the Orange County Library and get free audiobooks, there you go.
I'll look into that, because Mortal Engines is something I was interested in when it came out, but the movie itself was horrible.
I looked at the trailer. That's all I looked at. I looked at the trailer after I finished watching the movie and went...
I didn't watch the movie.
No.
Because I saw the trailer and it looked horrible, but the concept sounded cool.
Yeah.
So,
well, here's the funnier thing. By the end of the trilogy, the main characters actually become unimportant in like sort of the last chapter / epilogue. So it's one of those things where this could have been a very legendary trilogy if there weren't dramatic failures in character development or character decision making out of the 2 main characters. Like, if you want characters to fall in love, you don't want to sit there in the sequel book and be begrudged to their fucking relationship.
Ooh.
Yeah. Or look at what a character does and go, how do you not rethink your decision you're about to make before a certain point, especially when you've got a long sort of flight, like to making that bad decision.
Yeah.
It just there's certain elements of like two of the main characters that are badass, and then just like not actually human, because there's certain human fallacies that are very believable. Like you're just like I could like you, the great human fallacies that are shown in narratives that grip you are the ones that you go, I would do that, I would fucking do that. Like I would be that stupid,
Right.
I would be that focused in on this that
Or
I
that
would,
you could at least see somebody reasonably choosing if they,
yeah, yeah,
based on their character.
yeah. And as I listened to that book, I went, no, oh god, no. Why are you? No, no, no. Why would you?
This doesn't make any sense. Why are you doing this?
Yeah. Well, here's the funniest thing. My favorite character dies within one book.
Ow.
She is created and dies in one book,
Ow.
and then I am left in the preceding book or whatnot because I don't want to spoil too much.
She left you behind with?
She's dead, dies in a tragic way, and you're sitting there going, like, but I like this character. The other two characters I don't like, but I have to put up with them now? They have to carry this fucking story? You've got to be shitting me! What the fuck, man?
And yet nobody was shitting you. It was you who had shat.
No. The universe is fascinating. There's some characters that are just great. Like, the unfortunate thing about that series is that the two main characters end up so flawed, but a lot of supporting characters are just gorgeous. So yeah, back to your wasteland, desert, Great Depression, 20s era, next era, D&D, not D&D, Bryant-esque 6E version.
Speaking of inspiration or similar settings, a source that I drew heavy inspiration from was Stephen King's The Dark Tower.
I feel like I need to spend like a year on Stephen King to grab a few of his books and then listen to the Dark Tower series.
The Dark Tower series is fantastic. However, I would say that if you can find an old version of the Dark Tower book, that would be the one to do it, because he edited the book a few years back for with like 100,000 extra words to it that didn't need to be there. The first book was pretty much
clean,
perfect when it was done the first time. I think I read it when I was like 16 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And it opened my eyes to what the definition of a heroic character can be, because I was very single-minded on what heroic characters could be, because it was always somebody who, like would do the right thing. But, at the end of the day, that's not very interesting if that's all there is.
It's the Superman issue, and you have to create a cardboard kingdom to make Superman interesting.
Right. Where the main character in this story, his name's Roland. He's just a person. Like, he's just a man with a lot of skills. He's very good at what he does, but he is very fallible. And throughout the course of the book, I don't want to spoil it for anybody. Spoiler thing here, but
the important question I have is: do you feel that series is enhanced significantly by reading other Stephen King books?
Not necessarily. I'm not a Stephen King fan. I actually don't like most of his books.
Okay, because I know that he incorporates several of his previous books before the Dark Tower series, and they kind of wind up into that interdimensional world of the Dark Tower series.
Oh yeah. as much as I may not be a Stephen King fan, I think it was very important for him to write the other books that he did before he wrote this one. Um, I'm a fan of meta narrative,
Mm-hmm.
where the narrative examines itself,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I like Deadpool as a character,
Yeah.
and why I love The Dark Towers as a series. The Gunslinger, which is the first book, perfect book on its own. If you never read the rest of the Dark Tower series, that's fine. That book is a complete story on its own and is beautiful. The rest of the series is fantastic as well, except for book 5. It's a bit of a brick. But when you get through it, it gets much better.
It's a brick that sharpens right at the last tip end.
Yeah. But that series of stories inspired me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
With the meta narrative, it's genre combining.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, does it say fuck convention? Because if I can describe it in every way that it is a Western sci-fi fantasy of time traveling, dimension hopping group of adventurers where one book is entirely a flashback. The whole book is a flashback. Which is fucking bonkers. Because it's one of the better books, like, out of the whole series. It's one of the best books out of the series. The flashback book. That is equal parts comedy, tragedy, and adventure. It is the masala of books series.
It's like the magnum opus of his career. That
Actually, the funny part about that is he stopped writing it for a while and almost got into a situation where he died. And he was interviewed, and he said, "I need to finish the series before I die,"
yeah,
because he considered it his magnum opus.
yeah,
But then again, this is me as a fanboy of the series. I completely understand my opinion of this is biased. One, because I love Westerns, both as a concept and a genre. And two, because it was one of the first series of books that showed me what people could be as heroes rather than the standard.
Yeah, the gold standard as opposed to the flawed standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I love flawed heroes. If you have someone who is primarily heroic but then makes the wrong choice because they believe it is the right choice,
Yeah.
that is tragic, and I fucking love it. Sorry. I don't mean to be so loud.
Well, I just finally finished the core Richard Kalin series. I think Tara Goodkind's about to revamp it or something like that when I checked the subreddit. But I finally finished that series, and so I'm probably about to configure what I'm about to endeavor into next in terms of fiction listening to. So if I make the potentially, and I'm waiting to get blown up by this, the naive choice to just jump into the Dark Tower series and crash through that inside of 6 months, through audiobook, that might be the send off right there.
Do it.
Because I'm actually, I laugh at this idea. So I do pest control in my day job, which is like probably about 6:30 a.m. to like 3 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday. And I'm fascinated by the idea that I could be out in a really rich person's house, like going around their house checking termite stations, being scared shitless by a Carrie story just to get all these contextual, like, other stories of Stephen King, to then go into the Dark Tower series and have all these extra emotions as I go through the series. Because I think that would be... I don't think it'd probably be quintessential to the Dark Tower series narrative, I think there's something to be said about you, and you know this. When you read
Yeah.
one sentence reference and it brings about like 6 months of trauma of reading another fucking book, like,
I absolutely know about that.
so like, did you ever read the Aragon series, the Quad?
Motherfucker! That
Right?
shit made me.
Melanie couldn't even get past the first one because it got so boring to her.
That's what I grew up on.
Right.
Let me tell you, spoiler warning, when Brahm died, I couldn't pick the book up for 3 weeks
Brahm.
because I just couldn't.
Was that his dad?
It wasn't his dad, it was his mentor in the first book.
And he makes the crystalline graveyard outside that
Yes.
city.
When he died, I could not pick up the book for 3 weeks because I was so sad. I was like, you hurt me, Aragon.
Okay,
I can't let you do that again.
there she is.
I heard my name.
I mentioned
Yeah.
to you in regards to you couldn't finish the first book of the inheritance cycle.
You mean Aragon?
With Aragon, yeah.
Yeah, I got halfway through the book and still couldn't get into it. It was very disappointing.
Yeah.
That's fair. As I got older, I realized the book's not great. It's a book that's written by a kid, and it
It
as an
was.
adult reading it was a book written by a kid.
It was a book
But
written
as
by
a
a kid.
child,
Well,
it was entertaining enough to me for me to slog through it. And I asked for every book afterwards.
Yeah. Yes, dear.
Okay,
but like the one reference I had is that every time I have the intonation of a hammer-based combat, I think of his brother's fucking scene. His brother's scene where he knocks down like 200 motherfuckers one at a time.
he just keeps rising on their fucking bodies.
Oh my god! Like, granted,
Man.
Christopher, what's his face, who wrote the series? Granted, he's a young
Paolini.
kid. Yeah, Paolini or something like that. He was a huge like Tolkien fan, I imagine, which is where people want to criticize it as like a Tolkien knockoff. And I was like, yes, it has elves, dwarves, dragons, or whatnot, but there's something to be said about certain moments in that series were so iconic that you can't discredit it as a piece of trash when
No.
it sells so well. If it's like, it's one of those where like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star was written by a 12-year-old or a 6-year-old, but it's still lauded because it is from a legendary thing that is so memorable and just sticks into it inserts itself against your will into the ether of human history. And that scene where his brother is just one-offing through a pile of bodies with a hammer.
So fucking cool.
Suck my dick. Not to mention, like, in the final book, the final fucking book, when you're getting that image of the main villain's dragon just rising over the fucking
It's like the size of a fucking city.
Yeah, it just throws its shadow out. You just sit there reading words and seeing it in your head and going like,
My problem with the last book, and it's also, I thought it was kind of genius at the same time. He wins just because he learns
understanding.
the magic Jesus words.
The magic of understanding. If you can force understanding on someone like he does with magic Jesus words or whatnot, and like his brother learns with magic Jesus words, if you can force someone to understand your perspective, their entire argument falls. It's actually a very meta argument, and it feels like a cop-out, but if you could ever get someone to understand your perspective, their entire argument is either validated or destroyed.
Yep. And that's the part that I liked about it, but also I realized that it's kind of a cop-out. Like, but at the same time, I loved it. Oh, God, it's very conflicting. So anyways.
I think that's what makes it great.
Yeah.
Because if you understand anything about human existence, is that if you can let your ideas die, you don't have to.
Yep.
And unfortunately, the main villain could not let his ideas die, therefore he had to.
Yep.
And that's what makes it so, like, not traditional in terms of a very basic narrative conclusion where the main villain dies or gets sent to the underworld or exile or something. Because if you're going to be met with impossible odds, you must come up with the impossible
Possible
answer.
answer. Yeah.
Yes. And the impossible answer in a human narrative is actually based in ideas.
Yep.
It's not based in just monkeys fucking fighting as much as like part of us wants that.
Filthy monkeys.
Because all that really happens to defeat like Sauron is a ring is melted in a volcano. That's
But it's
all.
not about that.
No, it's about like the age of man. And here's what's so crazy to me about like all of these like these fucking fantasy things is that part of me believes and thinks that they are an alternative timeline to before what we know as history that goes back to the most ancient things that we know about Egypt. Like, and there's certain things that science can't explain, like how they were able to create farmland in Amazon. Because if you want to check this shit out, because I've been watching JRE for a while and I've gone back. If you looked at Randall Carlson or Hancock, these guys that believe in ancient history before ancient history as we know it, and believe like human civilization is way older than we believe it is based on current archaeology, which is way more gridlocked and preventative of new ideas coming into play. It's there are certain stories that our fiction writers are creating that compel our spirits so much that if they are not true in some way to the history of the earth, it's beyond me. Like there's like I think Tolkien captures like an age of human and magical history of the earth that may have factually happened, but we in this current age of human existence can never actually attain.
An interesting point to that. Based off of
I keep drinking this alcohol combo to get more hydrated, but that's not realistic. That's not chemically viable.
based off of the Similarian and everything that went into the Tolkien books.
Yeah, the quad plus the Silmarillion.
Middle Earth is actually just an island off of like Nordic lands.
Yeah, it's
which is fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's one. How big would you say Middle Earth is, like as a whole?
It's not that big, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I would have to go back because I did go through all 4 books on audiobook in the last like year and a half. And I just don't know how long feels, because Gandalf went from, where did he take him? Because he got Pippin, just after the Two Towers combat, and goes for like a week or 2 to get to Gondor by constant horseback. So I don't know what that equates to in terms of size, because you could probably call that maybe like a third of like the stretch of Middle Earth as an entire region, because not even the Shire is actually at the coast. There's still like maybe a third to get to the coast, where they actually eventually leave, and end the series there in Return to the King.
Cap on that.
Oh, wrong cap. And I bumped my tooth on that too.
Yo, that's how I chipped this tooth right here.
Where you like take a bottle straight to the mouth and then you end up chipping a tooth because you're retarded?
Yep.
Relatable.
So anyways, yeah, that's a lot of my world is based off of the Dark Tower.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what I wanted to do with the non-combat classes is also make a bunch of different backgrounds for people to come from, because
they don't have to directly relate to combat.
Yeah, and like hold on, I'm actually gonna pull up on the.
Do you have like a Goliath that knits?
Oh, the race Goliath. Okay, no, we don't have Goliaths. We do have mutants though, which were created through magical mutation.
Like Witchers?
Kind of, but not in the way you're thinking. They look like, and I shit you not, they look like Sasquatch.
You want to define Sasquatch because, like, oh, so they look
Uh,
like hairy motherfuckers,
they look like big hairy gorilla people.
like you not shaven.
Sure, let's go with that amazingly insulting comparison. Um, where is okay? Okay, so some of the backgrounds I have are things like the Holy Sword. You were once a criminal, and people haven't forgotten or forgiven you. You exiled yourself out into the wasteland to die, alone and half crazy from the lack of water. Nearly starving, you wandered upon the ruins of a long forgotten battlefield, the bones of the dead covered in sand and eroded by wind. You heard something calling to you from the center of the field. Stuck in the sternum of a near giant, almost humanoid creature was a single blade. This blade was held by a small human skeleton that couldn't have been taller than 5.5 feet. It was not grand or large, but inscribed in a language you don't know, and it whispers to you. Your only recourse was to take it. Now you wander with this instrument on your side and little else. So that's like one of the like more
And it's a
like
mutant.
weird.
It's a mutant's like
Oh
origin.
no, that's just a background that you can
Okay.
pick.
Okay.
The races are actually humans are the only actual race. Everything else is just kind of an offshoot of what a human is, which I tried to think of it from a real life perspective in that way. Basically, this is the setting is Earth, but 300 years in the future or so. So there's humans, rad turned, which are basically ghouls from Fallout. People who are mutated such that by radiation rather than magic, that they live extremely long lifespans,
Okay.
but are sickly and weak themselves. Mutants, who are people created through magical radiation, because at some point during that 300-year span, humans started being able to do magic, and it caused all sorts of crazy shit to happen. Cyborgs, which are just humans with robot parts.
Yeah.
And then the last one isn't actually human, it's robots.
Yeah. Pure robots.
Yeah. So those are all the different kinds of like races you can be. And then when you've picked that, you pick one of these backgrounds, which Holy Sword is a background. There's also Major City Citizen. Hailing from one of the last major cities, you've lived a life most have only dreamed. Access to water on a semi-regular basis, food in your belly at least once a day, and a mat to sleep on with a roof over your head. That's the dream. Your job, while not necessarily fulfilling, keeps you alive and you're good enough to stay at it. The dream in this world. That's the dream for most people. Child of a preacher man.
So they're
Where
Catholic.
Well, not necessarily. It's any of the magic religions, shamans, voodoos, or godsmen.
Wait, did you say voodoo dudes?
Yeah, that's what they're called.
Like bros who use dolls to fuck with you?
Well, no, dude is in the Western term. You fucking uncultured swine.
I'm just picturing some stoner surfer motherfucker with a Barbie doll going,
Dude.
check it out, I'm gonna make him stab himself, man.
But anyone who follows what would be an Abrahamic religion is called a godsman.
Okay. So
And shamans are shamans.
okay.
Bounty hunter is one of the more combat focused ones. You start off with like a gun, and these give you items to start off with as well as special abilities or
Yeah.
other stuff. At a certain point, when someone was doing a test reading of this, they were like, "Wow, you have a lot of classes in this game," and I'm like, "No, these are just backgrounds. The classes come later." It's like, "What the fuck?"
Have you done a full exploration of your system? Like for like I always have to remind myself and how I'm talking to someone like, are you trying to pitch this as something that you want to take further for marketing or something like that. But like, have you done like a full capturing of this system um, in a game per se? Because I feel like you've been developing this and made it into a game. It's sort of my curiosity is, I guess, are you interested in actually like playing this out into a well-developed campaign to showcase it and
Oh yeah.
perhaps like, because I feel like you've probably troubleshot this enough um, that as ridiculous or complex as it may appear, it is quite it's actually easily executable once you get through what might be considered taller than actually are humps.
Um, the biggest problem that I've noticed is my writing.
Like just your
There's
English.
partially there's a point where my brain can understand something and write it down that other people obviously, they aren't privy to what's going on in my head,
Yeah.
which is why I need playtesters.
Yeah.
And when I, for instance, there are people that when I have them make a character for the game, I say nothing during character creation unless they specifically ask.
Yeah.
Because I ask them, I need you to go through this as if I wasn't here.
Yeah.
And the parts that they don't understand allow me to understand what needs further explanation.
Yes. Okay.
So in the state that it's in right now, I would obviously never sell this.
Yeah.
Because it's a bungled up bunch of ideas thrown together by my brain.
Yeah. Well, I always have an interest in production because I see everything as a potential series.
But yeah, I would love to do that. The example that I gave you earlier about the robot blowing up a city because they wouldn't give him water, that's this game.
It would be a robot.
He was trying, and the thing is, he failed at doing what he was trying to do. He was trying to send the nuke off far enough so that it wouldn't kill him, because he integrated into this old nuclear facility.
Oh, you just remind me of another fucking book series that I didn't finish.
So he integrated into the nuclear facility, and he was like, what are your primary functions? Like, yes, this is a nuclear testing facility. And right outside, before they went in, they found these bunch of crazy people worshiping the nuke as a chrome god. So they got into the middle of a combat situation, but then the robot came out and is like, I am an emissary of your god. And he's a robot, and they haven't seen robots on a consistent basis. So they're like, clearly, this is part of the mechanical god's plan. So he convinced them.
If he speaks, he must be saying truth.
Exactly. So he convinced them to stop trying to kill the other player character, which was my dad was playing him at the time. They got inside the facility, and they tried to send the nuke off to go fuck with this town. The robot did. My dad had no idea what was happening because the robot just plugged itself into the computer and just stood there because he was talking, in the cyberspace to the computer.
Nice.
And I was like, I don't even know what the hell I'm going to have you roll for this. Just roll one of every, roll like 5 of the purple and red dice. So he rolls all those dice, and it averages out to him having 3 failure, 3 radiation, and 1 advantage.
Nice.
So I'm like, you blow up. But you can back yourself up on the computer system. Everything else in a 100-mile radius, though, is now exploded and full of radiation. So he contaminated the Mississippi, the strongest source of clean water, with radiation, basically ruining the economy
of the entire continent.
Yeah.
Oh my. I'm not even in this world. I'm not even playing the game yet, and my soul is in tarnation.
Is in tarnation. And like the whole time my dad's looking at me like, aren't you going to stop him? And I'm like, I can't stop him. I could stop him, but I'm not gonna. It's making.
Were you playing this like in person?
No, it was
Online?
online.
Okay, I was just checking because I know where your dad lives, so I was like, wait, what? Like, did you actually land all these people in the same fucking place?
So yeah, that's like one of the crazy scenarios that happened in there. Another one is a group of people in Baltimore, and they're part of a gang.
Who likes Baltimore?
They chose it as the starting city. I asked them literally anywhere but the New Orleans coastline because
you have to start somewhere else.
Yeah, that had been done to death for me, and I needed to do other places. So they picked Baltimore, and I did a much more urban style with that. Mm-hmm. It was very similar in the lack of resources, but it was all concrete jungle. Yeah. The facade of a big city was ripped away. Basically, the city itself was sectioned off into parts where gangs were running it. Mm-hmm. But like a business, up front, there was still gang violence, but there was a center you could go to speak with members of the gang to take up your issues. Yeah. So long as you paid protection fees. It worked like a mafia just out in the open. So they had an assassination contract for the characters to go deal with a butcher who had been causing issues. And when I say a butcher, I mean someone who kills people and cuts them up into pieces and serves them as meat.
Publix.
Exactly. So they're like, how do we get there? And I'm like, well, it looks like you're walking. You don't have a car, and you're not high enough to, get one from the auto pool. They had company cars, mind you. So they go out into the waste, and they spend a gold bullet, which is a narrative device that allows you to put stuff out into the world for narrative resolution, basically. Mm-hmm. So they spent a gold bullet on having a car that was like really beat down, but could, make the trip.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. So they go to the car, they're trying to get it open, and then they're like, what are you doing with my bicycle? And it was a group of bandits from neutral zones, which is areas that the gangs don't inhabit because there's fucking psychotic people living there in mass droves.
Makes sense.
And so they had to basically either get the car working fast enough that they could run away or shoot down these people while they were trying to get the car working. And it was a hilarious scene where one of the bandits ended up getting on the car, and they just couldn't seem to kill this guy. And then they're like, wait a minute. And one of them just slams on the brakes, and the dude flies off at 70 miles an hour into a pillar and dies after he had basically like crashed the windshield, almost half killed one person. And they're like, that was so easy. Why didn't we just think of that?
Why don't we think of having the luckiest happenstance possible?
Well, no, they didn't think to just step on the brakes, which is what launched him off the car in the first place.
If you think about it, if you can make the passenger safety belt fail, you can have a very easy murder whenever you want it. I mean, that's how you get rid of babies.
Remember, kids. That's how you do it.
That's how you get rid of babies.
Abortions can go up to any trimester, including the 278th.
Late term abortion at 300 months. What would that be? 9 months is 0. So let's do. I want to do this quick maths. Actually right now.
378. You said divided by 12.
So 300 minus 9.
Minus 9.
291 divided by 12. So at 24.25. At 24.25, your mother can hit the brakes, send you out the windshield, and say aborted. That's a good age to decide whether or not your kid's worth keeping.
It is. Another one of the backgrounds is caravan cruiser, where you're basically working as like a guard for a big rig, which are things. It's like transport of supplies.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ones is former trader. It's like so like mundane,
Yeah.
but it's a big deal in this world to be someone who goes out and trades in supplies.
Yeah.
Another one is an escaped slave. So there are slavers in this world. It's part of the
Naturally.
harsh reality.
Welcome to human history.
Exactly. But this background doesn't start with any items or any money. The only things you get are an additional burden, which is that there's a bounty on you, and a burden is a narrative device for character creation. A character is made up of four things. It's the race, background, burden, and then the class. So those are the four building. So anyways, you start off with an additional burden, which is a bounty being placed on you. So someone's hunting you down because you're a slave, and the slaver wants his property back. But you have no items. You have an ability called resourceful, where living as a slave, you are more resourceful than your average individual. Whenever you do anything involving crafting, modding, or creating, you get to cascade your dice an extra step, which cascading refers to the downward movement of dice to the next skill level.
Yeah.
And 50 bonus experience.
Yeah.
Which the way that the game works is not a level system. It's an experience expenditure system. So you buy things with your experience rather than leveling up and getting things. But that one I like because one, the narrative is interesting. You start off with nothing, absolutely nothing, but you have a lot of potential.
Yeah, you're black.
Goodbye. I'm just gonna go over here now. I am too big to convey.
I'm sorry. I've been hanging out on that one for a minute, waiting for a really good point to smack it down. Okay. So you're Jewish during the 40s.
Jesus Christ. Yes, but you don't have to say it.
Okay, so you're a slave in this storyline or whatnot. Well, that's I feel like do you feel like that you actually marinated down to probably like several, like a very small number, but a core batch of backstories that would, granted, mix with your setting, but match human history as a whole? Because I think even now we have slaves in the modern era that aren't human trafficking, but there are people that have just succumbed to lives that are slavery to the jobs and the lifestyles that they have. So like
I would say that is a fairly accurate way of describing what I've made. There's a lot of them that have parallels to myth. For instance, I was about to give this example after we talked about the slaves, but the Dark Rider.
Yeah.
Your hand is bleeding over the old, ruined, and cracked pavement of the ancient crossroads. Buried near it is the heart of a creature you killed. You don't like thinking about it. The blood drips down your hand, falling through the air. You remember the reason you wanted to do this, why you needed to do this. The blood splatters upon the road, and the words pour forth from your mouth. You can't stop yourself from saying them. Something's gnawing at you. This is a mistake. Suddenly, a cool mist rubs your cheek, giving you a moment of comfort before the spike of anxiety rattles through your grit. The entity stands before you, its palm outstretched to you, its voice a whisper, as loud as thunder in your ears. Do we have a deal? And it's basically the narrative of people giving up basically anything for power.
Making a deal with the devil.
Yes. Not necessarily the devil, but whatever dark entity
you're making a deal in blood is how that plays out. There's no visualization of the words that you just give that don't picture the liquid as blood and the outstretched hand as either someone you've killed that you had to kill or needed to kill, or an action that needed to be taken, and then the you have a deal just instantly pictures like some well-dressed devil or the devil from Futurama.
Right. So when you start off with that background, you start off with an additional burden of being cursed.
Yeah.
Because you have to take the curse on to get this power, but you get a very unique starting weapon, which only starts off with 6 damage, which isn't that great.
Oops. There we go. My bad.
Oh,
Everything's fixed. Everything should be fixed. Everything's definitely fixed. Hold
I mean,
on.
your video's not showing on my end.
Hold on. Let me fix some things. I accidentally clicked some wrong things.
It's all good.
There we go.
So, anyways, you start off with this weapon that doesn't do a lot of damage at the start. It's like only 6 damage. The crit rating for it is 4, which means you have to spend 4 lucky points, like the horseshoes, to get a critical with it. But it has 3 hard points, which are like customization, like the things you can modify with it.
Yeah.
And the ammo it uses is stress. So there's 2 different types of health in this game. There is physical health and mental health. So you can spend your mental health to shoot this gun.
Yeah.
And in this game, ammunition is also a form of currency.
Yeah.
So it's a very powerful weapon in that aspect, and it also has the silent quality.
Yeah.
Which means that you can just fire it anywhere and it not, cause any problems. And you also start off with a unique horse, it's an undead horse. It can't be killed. It can be torn apart, but you can stitch it back together if you have the means to do it, and it'll work just fine. And you start off with a negative ability called Cursed Karma. Anytime a gold bullet is used, you lose the stress, which means anytime Karma is trying to help somebody, you suffer for it.
Yeah.
And then the one right after that is another mundane one. It's a refugee. So people from otherwheres in the world's coming here thinking it's a better life. It's not, but
this is America. Don't get you tripping up.
There's exiles, wanderers, people who come from tribal backgrounds,
a lot of archetypical characters, basically.
Yeah, and you start off with different equipment and abilities based off of these. It helps,
define
build your character.
Yeah, define them.
Yeah. Better. One of them's high-tech facility, and that's I was referencing Fallout when I did that one. Because you start off with this unique technological device called a pocket prospector, which is basically the Pip-Boy. Although when you say the pocket prospector, it sounds kind of dirty.
I'm in your pocket. I see your vagina. It's quite healthy and slippery.
But yeah, there's soldier, spy, a noble, which in this world is basically someone who controls trade. You can be part of the mafia, an urchin, a bodyguard. And these are all things that talk about your life before you start the game. You can have a background where you grew up in a bar or a saloon. You can be part of an order of knights called the Gunslingers. You can be the child of a captain, the survivor of a cannibal attack. And in that one, you have an option to lose one of your limbs for extra experience as the trade-off.
What? Okay. I wrote it down for later because I'm interpreting I'm pretty good at capturing what my genius tells me to do or ideas my genius puts out. And my drunken self, the only challenge is to permit what the genius says and put it down on paper. And I have it written down on this G-Doc titled Aaron B. Notes for Interview, but obviously we've expanded. And now it has a 100-episode series with Bryant system. where we basically grab whoever's willing to do 100 episode series of your system with obviously a proper length of time per session
Right.
to adequately execute upon your system based on whatever parameters would equate to a well executed and experienced and produced campaign per se.
That would be dope. I would be all about that.
I
But
am very much committed to things that end outside
Yeah.
of my future marriage or whatnot. Although she'll probably die before me, I think.
oh, sad face.
I don't know. She's had
For
more
the insurance money, right? That
my
way
man.
we can finally start our life together.
Hey, one of us is gonna die happy, and it's gonna be the one with the insurance policy benefit.
But I made something like 60-ish backgrounds, all with a short narrative blurb, a set of skills that they start the game off with, items, unique abilities, experience bonuses, like start off for bullets, like which is their money, and whether or not they have fame or infamy, which in my system basically means who will be more willing to talk to you. And I did that because so many times I played a game where I wanted to just be like a normal person in that world who rises to greatness.
Yeah.
But I felt so often that I was somebody who already had skills, like really good skills, that is just meeting the challenges that are expected of them rather than doing something outside the bounds of what was expected.
Yeah.
Which in this game, I mean, some of the classes are literally like there's a class called a towner, and there's 3 different types of towners you can be, which is a sawbones, which is just a doctor, a doctor.
I find bones. I saw them, both visually and with this saw.
A diplo, which is you're a diplomat, or a bookworm. You're literally just someone who knows things. You're Tyrion Lannister.
I drink and I know things.
One of the other classes in the game is a gambler. You literally are just a gambler. Now, one of the abilities in there is as the class progresses, is you progressively are able to manipulate fate, like the odds of fate. There's traders as a whole class system because, and I'll tell you, that's probably one of the strongest classes in the game from an overarching standpoint. Someone who is well versed in trade, because this is a
already
game.
a trader. They're already established. They're already fluent per se in a very valuable trade.
Well, no. When I say trader, I mean they're someone who trades goods.
Yes. But the trade is trading.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And people don't think of that as something that can be powerful, but in a system, in a setting where
bargaining is king.
Yeah, where basic supplies for living are so strenuous to come by, that is a kingly class.
Yeah, you could almost rename it as merchant minus a currency, a well-defined currency.
Right. And then there's a blackfinger, which is an old term for basically a mechanic because of oil.
I like that.
And then there's like smiths and
carpenters,
hackers is what I was going for. It's people who, and in this world, that's like a very specific skill set. And it's difficult to make it in the world as someone who's good with code, because so few people have high ranking technology. But if you are, that's a very valuable skill set. the most common technology available is like the robots that walk around. And most of them have come out from the wasteland into civilized areas, basically either looking for someone to give them something to do because they want to function, or because they wandered there sentient.
Well,
Um,
regardless, like if you're going to define any sort of conscious being as we can define it, purpose and meaning is everything.
yeah, even if you're just a human, you're gonna want to look for something to do.
Whether you're a human or a V8, you need some fucking purpose.
Exactly. Um, but yeah, the book is up to 129 pages, and the backgrounds facilitate, I think, 60 something pages all by themselves. The classes, about 50 something pages.
Mm-hmm.
And that's only because I've been able to narrow down the information of the classes into a much more compact form. Makes it easier to read. Sorry. So a long tangent on that. There's a lot of other work that I'm being involved with. You and I are working on the fan dub thing.
Yeah, we can jump into that in the next round. Let me get this note down for us.
What note are you getting?
I'm taking notations. In my drunken state, I'm also taking notations of how to effectively do a 100 episode series and evaluate or cast the right people to commit to the 100 episode series to effectively evaluate your system. And so that the 100 episode series, while also being a piece of content for Pseudo, can also be an effective place for you to evaluate, improve, and expand upon your system for hopefully a very effective release in the next 5 years.
Ooh, that would be lovely.
That's what I do.
Thank you.
Well, I'm okay with I'm taking my current position as a newbie to D&D as a very important situation, as if I do not find your system too complicated or generically attractive, then its ability to become attractive to the early adopters equates to it'll never hit the massive majority.
Right.
In terms of that progression of the bell curve, per se. So, in always brainstorming of how to effectively execute upon good ideas, I need to just want to capture those notes. Now, if you don't want to expand on anything else for your system, we can definitely jump into discussing our FanDub project. There's not a lot that's really happened right now, and some people are already trying to filter themselves out because of just understanding what the project's nature is. So if you want to jump into that, go for it.
Yeah, definitely. So a friend of mine and I were talking one day, and he said that he wanted to do an English translation of a anime because he just liked the process and the thought behind translating anime into English. And so I was like, that sounds cool. Let's do that. Because I've been getting involved with a lot of voice acting stuff recently. And I brought Aaron on as
Me?
Yeah, as a producer, because if he was anything in the entertainment industry that I could pin him down as, it would 100% be a producer.
Do you know who okay, real quick as an aside. Ever since I was a child, the only thing I've ever really idolized or clearly went and said that equates to good shit has been Jerry Bruckheimer. Like that, like Lightning Tree or whatnot with like CSI back in the day, like Jerry Bruckheimer has always been this, like, if I see that, quick little short in the beginning of a movie. I was like, I'm about to watch some good shit.
Yeah, he did Pirates of the Caribbean, for those of you who don't know. Top Gun, the Bad Boys series. What's his IMDb? Let's see.
Run it back.
Titans. Remember the Titans? Oh God, that was a good film. Armageddon wasn't great, but it was entertaining.
I think it's still legendary, not for like any really good reason, just because it's like the only good like apocalyptic asteroid movie that we currently have in play.
That's a very specific subgenre of apocalyptic movie.
But it's asteroids come and destroy the world. It may be very specific, but there's nothing else out there like that right now. Like there's nothing else out there that is actually like a better version of Apocalypse.
That's very true. Okay, so interestingly enough, here's what he has coming up. Top Gun Maverick. So he's redoing
the new one where Tom Cruise ends up becoming an instructor.
Um,
Hopefully he's still gay.
An untitled Pirates of the Caribbean project.
Oh, geez.
National Treasure 3. Beverly Hills Cops 4.
Son of a bitch.
And Bad Boys 4.
I think he's going away from doing original content in his old age.
Well, I mean, when you've built up a portfolio like he has,
you can do whatever the fuck you want for cash cows.
Yeah, I feel like he's probably at this point just like I just want to make money to keep my lifestyle going, and that's it.
Yeah.
He was artistic at one point. He doesn't need to be now.
He created CSI.
Yeah.
He was a part of the creation of CSI, which
as far as serialized television goes, fantastic.
Grisham was like my favorite character because I love ambiguous, very good leadership that speaks in few words. Like I love that kind of leadership.
So anyone but me.
Well, who do you think is the leadership figure between you and I?
Between you and I, it depends on the situation entirely.
Very true. Very true.
In this situation, it's you because.
Well, this is my podcast.
Yeah.
In regards to Fan Dub, you may be the leadership figure, but you're going to look at me and go, "Could you please lead this for me right now and handle the humans?"
Oh yeah, no, 100%. That's why I brought you on so that I could be a baby.
I need to wear a diaper. Could you please put the suit and tie on while I wear this diaper? So Fandub is effectively we're actually trying to, in our very exceptionally and well-funded production, trying to dub undubbed animes.
Yep. So we have 3. One's called Star Driver, the other's called Morio no Hako, and the other one's called Kaiba. All of these have not had an American production.
Yeah.
So it's all Japanese. What we're going to do is basically rip all the audio out of it. There's going to be no original audio from that production left. We're going to take our actors, do their voice lines for it. We're going to make some. I'm not saying it's like anything crazy music-wise, but we're going to make our own music.
Yeah.
And then we are going to edit the audio to match up with the animation and release, quote unquote, that as an episode of the anime with an English cast. We've projected it at being around a 2-month process, more or less. And hopefully everything goes smoothly, but it won't, because that's not how, productions work. But I'm excited for it, and I'm from the voting that I've seen, Star Driver and Morio no Hako are in the lead, which I 100% called that because they're both the most accessible. Whereas Kaiba, while I think is the best one, it's very surreal and difficult to digest. Um, and then I have one other project, which you're taking notes now, aren't you?
I'm messaging a artist who makes some SoundCloud music that I wanted to
Oh,
feature in some of. He has a certain song that I wanted to feature in my Dorian's Diary series, and I wanted to and right now he's under contract with a with a label because he's young and dumb, I imagine. Um, so I wanted to let him know that he may also be able to include his music in our productions should he acquire permissions
ooh,
to corroborate with us or collaborate with
dope
us.
Sketty. I realize I forget every time until I remember that I have these weird little like spider palps on my mustache, like right here, just like the little part of the spider's mouth. It's the two little legs almost. Your hair swooshy is very beautiful.
My hair has gotten so long that my girlfriend Melanie can put like a little ponytail on it or something like that, like group it all back here. And
Cute.
I enjoy the part like you know very few people have met my father. On my dad's side, it's Syrian. He's bald with like a crownish thing going on. So I wear my mother on my head, although she is not with me anymore.
Bless.
Bless indeed. Where's that? Keep going though. If you had anything else.
Oh, right. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the Thorgan project. I sent you a couple of the images
Mm-hmm.
for it the other day, as well as the script to it. But we have, in like the course of like 4 or 5 days, we've gotten up to 43 panels of the comic done. And when that comic is finished, we're gonna make it a moving comic. I don't know how to describe it, but it's
Like an
basically
animated
like
comic or something like that, or like
sort of
or it jumps between the frames.
um basically the camera goes around on the page emphasizing what's happening with voice acting
Yeah.
added to it and Foley sound effects. Um Basically it's very still frame animation, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But it's chugging along, and the artist that I have working with me, he wanted to just do it, and get. He said if it makes any money, he'd ask for money then, but like he just wanted to do the project, and he trusts me. Like I'm not one of the kinds of people who won't give you what you earned.
Yeah.
Which don't ever believe anybody when they say that, kids. Always get it in writing. I told him you should ask for something specific, but he's like, nah, I trust you. And I'm like, okay. I wouldn't. I'm not gonna fuck you, but don't do that with other people.
Please. You're trusting me a lot, and I trust me not to fuck you, but you when you deal with other perps, other peeps, no trust. Not trust,
Yeah.
please. To save your own glutes.
And the guy's art style is really great. So the comic's primarily an action adventure comic, I guess, in the grand scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
His poses for movement are so evocative, and really that's really important when you're doing action in anything.
Yeah.
Even in movies, when you're filming action, if your character doesn't end up in a dynamic pose, you've done something wrong.
I'm reminded of Bleach right before Ichigo faces Aizen at the end of that like major arc, where like there's certain posing that matches the dialogue, that's the internal dialogue that's occurring, And there's something to be said about like there's probably a limited amount of poses that can be played, but each pose has a limited batch of communication that it is allowed to expel.
Yeah, and the
And you must match that properly.
the guy that that's doing the art for his name is Mark Tutage. Look him up on Facebook and Twitter. He does commissions. One of the panels that he did for it had the main character standing over somebody and looking down on him, and just the slight curvature of the spine along with the way that the hands were placed on the hips made me just like it wasn't we're at the stage of panel work where everything is literally just character models. It's not detailed in any way, but I could see the main character there, like standing over that guy.
Yeah.
And it felt so very lifelike, and it was very reassuring. I don't know when it's going to come out. It's working. It's making its way a lot faster than I thought it would.
The fandom.
I feel like
the fandom thing, or
the Thorigan project.
oh, the Thor. Yeah, your other thing. Yeah.
Yeah, which is what I was talking about with the artist.
Yeah.
He's doing it a lot faster than I thought he'd be able to.
He's an efficient workhorse.
Indeed. He also says this is the first time that he's really been excited about a project.
That'll make
which I'm glad I can facilitate.
That'll make a motherfucker work on his lunch hour.
Yeah, exactly. He's met me like probably once or twice every day for the past like 4 days doing panels. And in 4 days, we've done 48 panels, and we're on page 12 out of 20 for the script.
You're over halfway.
Yeah, in 4 days.
This motherfucker really likes your shit.
He does, which is encouraging for me. Thus far, everybody that I've shown the script to has enjoyed it, at least a little bit.
Yeah.
I did a script reading with a couple of people. There was 4 of us. And they really liked the tone to it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like scary, funny, where the main character is clearly psychotic and a rage monster, but it's funny because he has an irreverent tone.
Okay, I don't need to dive down this huge rabbit hole, but so there's a new film coming out by Alexandra Daddario, who's just the easiest thing I can say. Alexandra Daddario.
How do you spell Daddario? There it is. It already populated it.
New film. She's only really known by, like, at least by me in terms of she did, like, Halloween Horror Nights, but she has a new movie coming out. This We Summon the Darkness, which apparently is a horror comedy. And that's what you just reminded me of.
Is it a horror comedy in the same vein as Cabin in the Woods?
I don't know. Well, Cabin in the Woods was a horror comedy because it was a horror, but the meta elements made you laugh.
But yeah,
like the ridiculous.
That was intentional, though.
Yeah, the ridiculousity. Like
ridiculousity.
Like it's the scale of the ridiculous that came into it is how I would define that word, the ridiculosity. Like the level of ridiculous that that Cabin in the Woods went to made you laugh because it actually broke the ceiling that would lead into madness in how you had to capture what was happening in front of you.
Yeah.
Like, because there's certain things that you laugh at because they're so dark or so mean because they break normal bounds.
Mm-hmm.
And so
it's like a nervous laughter.
Yeah, nervous laughter, but sometimes it's not even nervous because nervous would indicate that there's like a little bit of apprehension in how your laugh sounds. Sometimes your laugh is out loud because it's very clear what you're seeing and hearing is bounds and leaps outside of the normal parameters of society as you know it. So Cabin in the Woods does that. Because Cabin in the Woods is that it's hilarious enough and horror enough that you can take it seriously from front to back.
Yep. I remember watching it 2 times. The first time I saw it, I watched it as a horror movie, and the second time I saw it, it's like, now just think about everything you're seeing, but funny. And then I like watched it again. And I'm like, this movie's hilarious.
Yeah, and it's not even hilarious because it's a bad movie. It's
No,
hilarious
it's
because
not.
it's almost troping on classic pieces of horror.
It 100% is, and it's very well written, very well made.
Oh yeah, because like it's I'm really enjoying us doing this voice cast series because it's forcing me to actually read scripts, which is why I actually want to jump into some Aaron Sorkin scripts, like with the newsroom. Because I want to read scripts. I want to know what they feel like because the only scripts I read before we got into the Hotbox voice cast was Tyler's draft scripts for The Unknown Plumber, which admittedly Melanie and I edited to fucking hell. Because we'd read so much classic book literature, like book type of writing, that we got to a script and either we mistakenly over edited or Tyler's amateur.
100% you probably
Quite
over-edited.
possibly.
Tyler actually is very good at script writing.
Well, that I appreciate hearing a proper counter to our negative commentary or critique.
Now, the specific script you were looking at, I didn't get to read, so maybe that was
Perhaps
a bad example.
Perhaps it was one of probably the first versions of season 3 for Unknown Plumber, but
Oh, right, yeah.
yeah, way
That was
early
great.
on, back when you were still in town, when we were practically like either like because when we were having our table reads at the apartment. There were certain things that Melanie and I both went, what the fuck is happening here? And then someone reads it out loud, and I'm sitting there in person going, like, check the room. No one says there's a problem. Oh, that's not a problem. Okay. Actually, that makes sense.
You were surrounded by a bunch of film students who knew what the fuck they were looking at.
Well, yes, but also there's a certain point where you should be able to read
wait,
that.
hold on. Before I forget, I do have a thing at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, we have 20 minutes left so we hit 3 hours. So if you need to go soon, we can do that. Because we've actually only shaved like one layer for you because I actually wanted to dive into, where's my notes? I wanted to dive into Hema and then also your relationship with your father as someone who has a very limited relationship with his own father. So, so if you got to leave soon, we'll save those for like a future episode. Because I do treat JHP like JRE in that people come back in a relatively often fashion for just bullshitting, hanging out, talking current events, but also diving further into whatever topics that, are tangential to the person that's on deck.
Yeah.
I can't believe my vocabulary is this good while I'm this drunk.
I don't think it's as good as you think it is, but
Dude. Well, I am impressed by myself at
tangential.
tangential. Yeah, if you need to jump soon, then we can call it right about here, do the ending promos, and get you out of here so you're comfortable for your 5 o'clock.
Excellent. I love you.
Dope. Alrighty. So sorry everyone who's watching this who is like registering that we're about to end this potentially very soon. I will get all of these sort of promo pieces for the artists that Aaron is working with, as well as sort of promoting his pieces and things that he's talked about. Into the descriptions down below in the YouTube upload of this, which should be on the Jailhouse Parlor podcast YouTube channel. So Aaron, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Go ahead and give a shout out for where they can find you, where people can find you at, and give a shout out for anything else that you might be working on or is upcoming.
Well, you can definitely find me on facebook.com/aaron.bryant.7169, which is apparently my Facebook homepage number. I never actually looked at it like that. You can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/table nights. And you can find me in Discord at the Round Table.
Oh, you do have a Discord.
Yes, that is the name of my Discord server.
I have not invaded it yet.
Oh, well, we're going to have you invade at some point.
You must fix this so I can mod it out so it actually has some structure to it.
Well, we're actually about to watch a movie shortly on that server, which was the thing I was telling you about.
Oh, do you watch it with your Discord group or whatnot?
Yeah.
Dope. Do you have any? Do you have concurrent viewers or whatnot, or is it just like you hanging out
Oh,
watching the
it's
movie?
just friends. It's
Friends.
friends.
What movie are you watching tonight?
Onward,
Onward. Oh yeah, everyone's like crying their eyes out about that. Like it's so fucking.
dude. It made me cry.
It
It
sounds like
made me.
it sounds like it's the first animated film in a while that isn't a part of the Minions level of buffoonery in the animation world right now.
Dude, as far as I'm concerned, this and Frozen are the only two movies that Disney has made in the past 20 years that is worth a damn.
What about Wreck-It Ralph?
Wreck-It Ralph's okay.
Okay, because I saw like I saw like half of that actually recently. I saw the second half of it.
God damn it, we're getting off on another tangent.
Okay, so thank you Aaron for coming on in. Again, we'll go ahead and I'll be editing this and putting it on up to the JHP YouTube channel. And you can check out Aaron at all of his pieces. Keep an eye out in the Pseudo Productions Discord for the fan dub announcements for when we actually finally get that underway. We're hoping to get our first episode of that out, like the main project of that out, by the end of next month, if not early August. If you are interested in dubbing any animes, feel free to call or reach out to us directly or through Pseudo Productions or JHP to become involved in that. Where auditions are coming up soon. But go ahead and watch the first. But if anything, if you want to capture the first 3 episodes, or just let us know in the Discord that you're interested, we're just going to be doing episode 1 of whichever anime is voting on first out of the 3 between Kaiba. What were the other 2?
Morio no Hako and Star Driver.
Yeah, we'll be doing 1 episode of one of those 3 and doing the full production in terms of the audio and the dubbing of the voice lines to effectively match the Japanese translation. So if you're interested, go ahead and let us know. We can get you on in. We have auditions coming soon, and we hope to have that completed by early August at the latest. Thank you again, Aaron. And we're going to go ahead and cut this on out. And hopefully we'll be able to get a 100... I want to talk to you about trying to get a proper